morose and disappointed. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. The travelings of are similar to the travelings of the modern hippies. Generally, hippies are sons of great fathers and great families. It is not that they are always poor, but some way or another they abandon the shelter of their rich fathers and travel all over the world. As stated in this verse, the living entity wants to become a Prabhu or master. The word Prabhu means master, but actually the living entity is not a master. He is the eternal servant of God. When the living entity abandons the shelter of God or Krishna and tries to become a Prabhu independently, he travels all over the creation. There are 8,400,000 species of life and millions and trillions of planets within the creation. The living entity wanders throughout these various types of bodies and throughout different planets. And thus, he is like King Puranjana, who traveled all over the world looking for a suitable place to live. Shri Narottam Das Thakura's son, Karma Kanda Jnana Kanda Kevala Visharabandha, the path of Karma Kanda, fruitive activities, and the path of Jnana Kanda, speculation, are just like strong pots of poison. Well, Amrita Baliya Yebakaya Nana Yoni Sada Pire. A person who mistakes this poison to be nectar and drinks it travels in different species of life. Kadarya Bhakshanakare, and according to his body, he eats all types of abominable things. For instance, when the living entity is in the body of a dog, of a hog, he eats stool. When the living entity is in the body of a crow, he eats all kinds of refuse, meaning junk, even pus and mucus, and enjoys it. The thus, Narottam Dasa Thakura points out that the living entity travels in different types of bodies and eats all kinds of abominable things. When he does not become ultimately happy, he becomes morose or takes to the ways of hippies. Thus, in this verse, it is said, Na anurupam, that the king could never find a place suitable for his purposes. This is because in any form of life and on any planet in the material universe, material world, a living entity cannot be happy because everything in the material world is unsuitable for the spirit soul. As stated in this verse, the living entity independently wants to become a Prabhu. But as soon as he gives up the idea and becomes a servant of God, Krishna, his happiness immediately begins. Therefore, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur sings, Miche Mayaravasi Yat Chabese Katcha Habudubudai. My dear living entity, why are you being carried away by the waves of Maya? As stated in Bhagavad Gita 1861, Ishvara Sarvabhutanam Hridese Rijunatistati Ramayan Sarvabhutani Yantra Rudrani Mayaya. The Supreme Lord is situated in everyone's heart, O Arjuna, and is directing the wanderings of all living entities who are seated as on a machine made of the material energy. The living entity is carried in the machine of the body through so many species of life on so many planets. Therefore, Bhaktivinoda Thakura asks the living entity why he is being carried away in these bodily machines to be placed in so many different circumstances. He advises that one surmount the waves of Maya by surrendering unto Krishna. Jiva Krishna Dasa E Visvasa Karlita Ara Dukanai. As soon as we confront Krishna, Krishna advises, Sarvadharmam Parityaja Mamekam Saranam Vraja Aham Tvam Sarvapapibhyo Mokshisyami Mahasucha. Abandon all varieties of religion and just surrender unto me. I shall deliver you from all sinful reactions. Do not fear. Bhagavad Gita 1866. Thus, we are immediately relieved from traveling from one body to another and from one planet to another. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, Brahmanda Brahmite Kona Bhagavan Bhagyavan Jiva Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya 19:151. If, while traveling, a living entity becomes fortunate enough to become blessed by the association of devotees and to come to Krishna consciousness, his real life actually begins. This Krishna consciousness movement is giving all wandering living entities a chance to take to the shelter of Krishna and thus become happy. In this verse, the words Vimana Eva are very significant in this material world. Even the great King of Heaven is also full of anxiety. If even Lord Brahma is full of anxiety, what of these ordinary living entities who are working within this planet? Bhagavad Gita 8.16 confirms Abrahma Bhuvanaloka Punar Avartina Virgina. From the highest planet in the material world down to the lowest, all are places of miseries wherein repeated birth and death take place. In the material world, a living entity is never satisfied, even in the position of Brahma or in the position of Indra or Chandra. One is full of anxiety simply because he has accepted this material world as a place of happiness. Wow. That means that the material world is not the place we want to be in. We want to go back to Godhead. That's why it says from the highest planet in the material world down to the lowest, all are places of misery wherein repeated birth and death take place. That means that there's nowhere in this material world where people will ever really be happy. Even in the position of Brahma or in the position of Indra or Chandra, one is full of anxiety simply because he has accepted this material world as a place of happiness. Whereas the truth is that this material world is a place of misery. Text number 12. King Puranjana had unlimited desires for sense enjoyment. Consequently, he traveled all over the world to find a place where all his desires could be fulfilled. Unfortunately, he found a feeling of insufficiency everywhere. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Srila Vidyapati, a great Vaishnava poet, has sung, Tatala Saikate Bari Bindu Sama Sutamita Ramani Samaje. Material sense gratification with society, friendship, and love is herein compared to a drop of water falling on a desert. A desert requires oceans of water to satisfy it. And if only a drop of water is supplied, what is its use? Similarly, the living entity is part and parcel of the Supreme Personality of God, who, as stated in the Vedanta Sutra, is Anandamaya Vyasa, full of enjoyment. Being part and parcel of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the living entity is also seeking complete enjoyment. However, Complete enjoyment cannot be achieved separate from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In his wanderings in the different species of life, the living entity may taste some type of enjoyment in one body or another, but full enjoyment of the senses cannot be obtained in any material body. Thus, Puranjana, the living entity, wanders in different types of bodies, but everywhere he meets frustration in his attempt to enjoy. In other words, the spiritual spark covered by matter cannot fully enjoy the senses in any circumstance in material life. A deer may become absorbed in the musical sounds vibrated by the hunter, but the result is that it loses its life. Similarly, a fish is very expert in gratifying its tongue, but when he eats the bait offered by the fisherman, it loses his life. Even the elephant, who is so strong, is captured and loses its independence while satisfying his genitals with a female elephant. In each and every species of life, the living entity gets a body to satisfy various senses, but he cannot enjoy all his senses at one time. In the human form of life, he gets an opportunity to enjoy all his senses pervertedly, but the result is that he becomes so harassed in his attempted sense gratification that he ultimately becomes morose. As he tries to satisfy his senses more and more, he becomes more and more entangled. Well, our takeaway is become a devotee, control our senses and mind, and engage them only in the service of Krishna. Then you will become free of all this unnecessarily suffering and anxiety and fear. All the whole process of satisfying the genitals is a real waste of time and uh, going on the wrong path of life. So, the genitals should be only used for procreation and nothing else. That's why it says that in each and every species of life, the living entity gets a body to satisfy various senses, but he cannot enjoy all his senses at one time. In the human form of life, he gets an opportunity to enjoy all his senses pervertedly, but the result is that he becomes so harassed in his attempted sense gratification that he ultimately becomes morose, and he tries to satisfy his senses more and more. As he tries to satisfy his senses more and more, he becomes more and more entangled.
Right. So only in the human form, all the senses are active.
Yeah, but if they go in the wrong direction, it becomes hell. Text number 13. Once while wandering in this way, he saw on the southern side of the Himalayas, in a place named Bharatavarsa, or India, a city that had 9 gates all about and was characterized by all auspicious facilities. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. In the tract of land south of the Himalaya mountains is the land of India, which was known as Bharatvarsa. When a living entity takes birth in Bharatvarsa, he is considered to be most fortunate. Indeed, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has stated, Bharata Bhumite Haila Manusya Janmayar, Janma Sartaka Karikara Para Upakara. Chaitanya Charitamrita Adi 9.41. Thus, whoever takes birth in the land of Bharata, Varsa, attains all the facilities of life. He may take advantage of all these facilities for both material and spiritual advancement, and thus make his life successful. After attaining the goal of life, one may distribute his knowledge and experience all over the world for humanitarian purposes. In other words, one who takes birth in the land of Bharatvarsa by virtue of his past pious activities gets full facility to develop the human form of life. In India, the climatic condition is such that one can live the human form. I'm sorry. In India, the climatic condition is such that one can live very peacefully without being disturbed by material conditions. Indeed, during the time of Maharaj Yudhisthira or Lord Ramachandra, people were free from all anxieties. There was not even extreme cold or extreme heat. The three kinds of miserable conditions, adhyatmika, adhibautika, and adidaivika, miseries inflicted by the body and mind itself, and those inflicted by other living entities and natural disturbances, were all absent during the reign of Lord Ramachandra or Maharaja Yudhisthira. But at present, compared to other countries on earth, India is artificially disturbed. Despite these material disturbances, however, the country's culture is such that one can easily attain the goal of life, namely salvation or liberation from material bondage. Thus, in order to take birth in India, one must have performed many pious activities in a past life. In this verse, the word lakshita lakshanam indicates that the human body attained in Bharatvarsa is very auspicious. Vedic culture is full of knowledge, and a person born in India can fully take advantage of Vedic cultural knowledge and the cultural system known as Varnashrama Dharma. Even at the present time, as we travel all over the world, we see that in some countries, human beings have many material facilities, but no facilities for spiritual advancement. We find everywhere the defects of one sided facilities and a lack of full facilities. A blind man can walk, but not see, and a lame man can walk, but can see. I'm sorry. A blind man may take, I'm sorry, a blind man can walk, but not see, and a lame man cannot walk, but can see. Andapangum Nyaya, the blind man may take the lame man over his shoulder, and as he walks, the lame man may give him directions. Thus, combined, they may walk, but individually, neither the blind man nor the lame man can walk successfully. Similarly, this human form of life is meant for the advancement of spiritual life and for keeping the material necessities in order. Especially in the Western countries, there are ample facilities for material comforts, but no one has any idea of spiritual advancement. Many are hankering after spiritual advancement, but many cheaters come, take advantage of their money, bluff them, and go away. Fortunately, the Krishna consciousness movement is there to give all facilities for both material and spiritual advancement. In this way, uh, people in the Western countries may take advantage of this movement. In India, any man in the villages, unaffected by the industrial cities of India, can still live in any condition and make spiritual advancement. The body has been called the city of nine gates. And these nine gates includes two eyes, two ears, two nostrils, one mouth, one mouth, a genital, and a rectum. When the nine gates are clean and working properly, it is to be understood that the body is healthy. In India, these nine gates are kept clean by the villagers who rise early in the morning, bathe in the well or rivers, go to the temples to attend Mangala Arti, chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, and take prasada. In this way, one can take advantage of all the facilities of human life. We are gradually introducing this system in different centers in our society in the Western countries. One who takes advantage of it becomes more and more enlightened in spiritual life. At the present moment, India may be compared to the lame man, and the Western countries to the blind man. For the past 2,000 years, India has been subjugated by the rule of foreigners, and the legs of process have been broken. In the Western countries, the eyes of the people have become blind due to the dazzling glitter of material opulence. The blind man of the Western countries and the lame man of India should combine together and in this Krishna consciousness movement. Then the lame man of India can walk with the help of the Westerner, and the blind Westerner can see with the help of the lame man. In short, the material advancement of Western countries and the spiritual assets of India should combine for the elevation of all human society. That sounds very nice. Text 14. That city was surrounded by walls and parks, and within it were towers, canals, windows, and outlets. The houses were decorated with domes made of gold, silver, and iron. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The body is protected by walls of skin. The hairs on the body are compared to parks, and the highest parts of the body, like the nose and head, are compared to towers. The wrinkles and depressions on different parts of the body are compared to trenches or canals. The eyes are compared to windows, and the eyelids are compared to protective gates. The three types of metal, gold, silver, and iron, represent the three modes of material nature. Gold represents goodness, silver, passion, and iron, ignorance. The body is also sometimes considered to be a bag containing three elements, three dhatu, mucus, bile, and air, kapha, pitta, and vayu. Yasyatma buddhi kunape chidatuke. According to Bhagavatam 10:84-13, one who considers this bag of mucus, bile, and air to be the self is considered no better than a cow or an ass. Text 15. The floors of the houses and in that city were made of sapphire, crystal, diamonds, pearls, emeralds, and rubies. Because of the luster of the houses in the capital, the city was compared to the celestial town named Bhogavati. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. In the city of the body, the heart is considered to be the capital. Just as the capital of a state is especially gorgeously filled with various high buildings and lustrous palaces, the heart of the body is filled with various desires and plans for material enjoyment. Such plans are sometimes compared to valuable jewels such as sapphires, rubies, pearls, and emeralds. The heart becomes the center for all planning for material enjoyment. Text 16. In that city, there were many assembly houses, street crossings, streets, restaurants, gambling houses, markets, resting places, flags, festoons, and beautiful parks. All these surrounded the city. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. In this way, the capital is described. In the capital, there are assembly houses and many squares, many street crossings, avenues and streets, many gambling places, markets, and places of rest, all decorated with flags and festoons. The squares are surrounded with railings and are devoid of trees. The heart of the body can be compared to the assembly house, for the living entity is within the heart along with the Paramatma, as stated in Bhagavad Gita 15:15. Sarvasya chaham hridi sanivisto, matak smritir jnanam apahanam cha. The heart is the center of all remembrance, forgetfulness, and deliberation. In the body, the eyes, ears, and nose are different places of attraction for sense enjoyment, and the streets for going hither and thither may be compared to different types of air blowing within the body. The yogic process for controlling the air within the body and the different nerves is called susumna, the path of liberation. The body is also a resting place because when the living entity becomes fatigued, he takes rest within the body. The palms and the soles of the feet are compared to flags and festoons. Text 17. On the outskirts of that city were many beautiful trees and creepers, encircling a nice lake. Also surrounding that lake were many groups of birds and bees that were always chanting and humming. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Since the body is a great city, there must be various arrangements, such as lakes and gardens for sense enjoyment. Of the various parts of the body, those which incite sexual impulses are referred to here indirectly. Because the body has genitals, when the living entity attains the right age, be he man or woman, he becomes agitated by the sex impulse. As long as one remains a child, he is not agitated by seeing a beautiful woman. Although the sex organs are present, unless the age is ripe, there is no sex impulse. The favorable conditions surrounding the sex impulse are compared here to a garden or a nice solitary park, where when one sees the opposite sex, naturally, the sex impulse increases. It is said that if a man in a solitary place does not become agitated upon seeing a woman, he is to be considered a brahmachari. But this practice is almost impossible. The sex impulse is so strong that even by seeing, touching, or talking, coming in contact with, or even thinking of the opposite sex, even in so many subtle ways, one becomes sexually impelled. Consequently, a brahmachari or sannyasi is prohibited to associate with women, especially in a secret place. The Shastras enjoin that one should not even talk to a woman in a secret place, even if she happens to be one's own daughter, sister, or mother. The sex impulse is so strong that even if one is very learned, he becomes agitated in such circumstances. If this is the case, how can a young man in a nice park remain calm and quiet after seeing a beautiful young woman. Text 18. The branches of the trees standing on the bank of the lake receive particles of water carried by the spring air from the falls coming down from the icy mountain. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. In this verse, the word Hima near Jahara is particularly significant. The waterfall represents a kind of liquid humor or rasa relationship. In the body, there are different types of humor or rasa or mellow. The supreme mellow relationship is called the sexual mellow, adi rasa. When this adi rasa or sex desire comes in contact with the spring air moved by Cupid, it becomes agitated. In other words, all these are representations of rupa, rasa, gandha, sabda, and sparsa. The wind is sparsa or touch. The waterfall is rasa or taste. The spring air, kusum makara, is smell. All these varieties of enjoyment make life very pleasing, and thus we become captivated by material existence. That's what we should not do, is become captivated by material existence. It's only possible by becoming Krishna conscious. Otherwise, everyone is captivated by material existence. Text 19. In such an atmosphere, even the animals of the forest become non-violent and non-envious like great sages. Consequently, the animals did not attack anyone. Over and above everything was the cooing of the cuckoos. Any passenger passing along that path was invited by that atmosphere to take rest in that nice garden. Is this the Garden of Eden? I don't know. A peaceful family with wife and children is compared to the peaceful atmosphere of the forest. Children are compared to nonviolent animals. Sometimes, however, wives and children are called swajanakya dasyu, burglars in the name of kinsmen. A man earns his livelihood with hard labor, but the result is that he is plundered by his wife and children exactly as a person in a forest is attacked by some thieves and burglars who take his money. Nonetheless, in family life, the turmoil of wife and children appears to be like the cooing of the cuckoos in the garden of family life. Being invited by such an atmosphere, the person who is passing through such a blissful family life desires to have his family with him at all costs. Well, yeah, it can cost a lot. Text 20. While wandering here and there in that wonderful garden, King Puranjana suddenly came in contact with a very beautiful woman who was walking there without any engagement. She had 10 servants with her, and each servant had hundreds of wives accompanying him. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The body has already been compared to a beautiful garden. During youth, the sex impulse is awakened, and the intelligence, according to one's imagination, is prone to contact the opposite sex. In youth, a man or woman is in search of the opposite sex by intelligence or imagination. if not directly. The intelligence influences the mind, and the mind controls the 10 senses. 5 of these senses gather knowledge. 5 work directly. Each sense has many desires to be fulfilled. This is the position of the body, and the owner of the body, Puranjana, who is within the body. Text 21. The woman was protected on all sides by a 5-hooded snake. She was very beautiful and young, and she appeared very anxious to find a suitable husband. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The vital force of a living entity includes the 5 kinds of air working within the body, which are known as prana, apana, vyana, samana, and udana. The vital force is compared to a serpent because a serpent can live by simply drinking air. The vital force carried by the air is described as the pratihara, or the bodyguard. Without the vital force, one cannot live for a moment. Indeed, all the senses are working under the protection of the vital force. The woman who represents intelligence was searching after a husband. This indicates that intelligence cannot act without consciousness. A beautiful woman is useless unless protected by the proper husband. Intelligence must always be very fresh. Therefore, the word aporudam, very young, is used here. Material enjoyment means utilizing the intelligence for the sake of rupa, rasa, gandha, sabda, and sparsa, or form, taste, smell, sound, and touch. So material enjoyment means utilizing the intelligence for the sake of rupa, rasa, gandha, sabda, and sparsa, or form, taste, smell, sound, and touch. That's what material enjoyment means. Text number 22. The woman's nose, teeth, and forehead were all very beautiful. Her ears were especially very beautiful and were bedecked with dazzling earrings. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The body of intelligence enjoys the objects of sense gratification that cover it, such as smell, vision, and hearing. The word sanasam, beautiful nose, indicates the origin for acquiring knowledge by smell. Similarly, the mouth is the instrument for acquiring knowledge by taste. For by chewing an object and touching it with the tongue, we can understand its taste. The word sukha polam, nice forehead, indicates a clear brain capable of understanding things as they are. By intelligence, one can set things in order. The earrings set upon the 2 ears are placed there by the work of the intelligence. Thus, the ways of acquiring knowledge are described metaphorically. A metaphor is a way of understanding something by example. Text number 23. The waist and hips of the woman were very beautiful. She was dressed in a yellow sari with a golden belt. While she walked, her ankle bells rang. She appeared exactly like a denizen of the heavens. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. This verse expresses the joyfulness of the mind upon seeing a woman with raised hips and breasts, dressed in an attractive sari and bedecked with ornaments. Text 24. With the end of her sari, the woman was trying to cover her breasts, which were equally round and well placed side by side. She again and again tried to cover them out of shyness while she walked exactly like a great elephant. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The two breasts represent attachment and envy. The symptoms of raga and dvesa, attachment and envy, are described in Bhagavad Gita 3.34. Indriyasyartha raga deveso vyavastito tayor na vasam agachet to hi asya paripantino. Attraction and repulsion for sense objects are felt by embodied beings, but one should not fall under the control of senses and sense objects because they are stumbling blocks on the path of self-realization. These representatives of attachment and envy are very much unfavorable for advancement in spiritual life. These representatives of attachment and envy are very much unfavorable for advancement in spiritual life. One should not be attracted by the breasts of young women. The great saint Sankaracharya has described the breasts of women, especially young women, as nothing but a combination of muscles and blood. So one should not be attracted by the illusory energy of raised breasts with nipples. They are agents of Maya meant to victimize the opposite sex. Because the breasts are equally attractive, they are described as samarito. The sex impulse remains in an old man, in an old man's heart also, even up to the point of death. To be rid of such agitation, one must be very much advanced in spiritual consciousness. Like Yamanujacharya, who said, Yad avadi mamacheta Krishna padara vinde, nava nava rasa damani uyatam rantum asit, tad avadi bata nari sangame smaryamane, Bhavati Mukha Vikara Sustu Nisti Vanamcha. Since I have been engaged in the transcendental loving service of Krishna, realizing ever new pleasure in him, whenever I think of sex pleasure, I spit at the thought and my lips curl with distaste. When one is spiritually advanced, he can no longer be attracted by the lumps of flesh and blood, which are the breasts of young women. The word nirantarao is significant because although the breasts are situated in different locations, the action is the same. We should not make any distinction between attachment and envy. As described in Bhagavad Gita 337, they are both products of Rajo Guna. Kama Esa, Krodha Esa, Raja Guna, Samudbhava. The word Niguhantim, trying to cover, indicates that even if one is tainted by Kama, Lobha, and Krodha, etc., they can be transfigured by Krishna consciousness. In other words, one can utilize kama, lust, for serving Krishna. Being impelled by lust, an ordinary worker will work hard day and night. Similarly, a devotee can work hard day and night to satisfy Krishna, just as karmis are working hard to satisfy kama and krodha. A devotee should work in the same way to satisfy Krishna. Similarly, krodha, anger, can also be used in the service of Krishna when it is applied to the non-devotee demons. Hanumanji applied his anger in this way. He was a great devotee of Lord Ramachandra, and he utilized his anger to set fire to the kingdom of Ravana, a non-devotee demon. Thus, kama, lust, can be utilized to satisfy Krishna. The krodha, anger, can be utilized to punish the demons. When both are used for Krishna's service, they lose their material significance and become spiritually important. Very nice statement. Text 25. Puranjana, the hero, became attracted by the eyebrows and smiling face of the very beautiful girl. 1 second. Okay. And was immediately pierced by the arrows of her lusty desires. When she smiled shyly, she looked very beautiful to Puranjana, who, although a hero, could not refrain from addressing her. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Every living entity is a hero in two ways. When he is a victim of the illusory energy, he works as a great hero in the material world, as a great leader, politician, businessman, industrialist, etc. And his heroic activities contribute to the material advancement of civilization. One can also become a hero by being master of the senses, a Goswami. Material activities are false heroic activities, whereas restraining the senses from material engagement is great heroism. However great a hero one may be in the material world, he can be immediately conquered by the lumps of flesh and blood known as the breasts of women. In the history of material activities, there are many examples, like the Roman hero Antony, who became captivated by the beauty of Cleopatra. Similarly, a great hero in India named Baji Rao became a victim of a woman during the time of Maharashtrian politics, and he was defeated. From history, we understand that formerly politicians used to employ beautiful girls who were trained as Risha Kanya. Ooh, very, very dangerous ladies. These girls had poison injected into their bodies from the beginning of their lives, so that in due course of time, they would become so immune to the poison and so poisonous themselves, that simply by kissing a person, they could kill him. These poisonous girls were engaged to see an enemy and kill him with a kiss. Thus, there are many instances in the human history of heroes who have been curbed simply by women. Being part and parcel of Krishna, the living entity is certainly a great hero, but due to his own weakness, he becomes attracted to the material features. Krishna Bahir Mukha Hana Bhoga Vanchakare Nikatasta Mayatare Chapatiyadare. It is said in the Prema Vivarta that when a living entity wants to enjoy material nature, he is immediately victimized by the material energy. Okay, but that's the law of nature. When a living entity wants to enjoy material nature, he is immediately victimized by the material energy. A living entity is not forced to come into the material world. He makes his own choice, being attracted by beautiful women. Every living entity has the freedom to be attracted by material nature or to stand as a hero and resist that attraction. It is simply a question of the living entities being attracted or not being attracted. There is no question of us being forced to come into contact with material energy. One who can keep himself steady and resist the attraction of material nature is certainly a hero and deserves to be called a Goswami, unless one is master of the senses. He cannot become a Goswami. The living entity can take one of two positions in this world. He may become a servant of his senses, or he may become master of them. By becoming a servant of the senses, one becomes a great material hero. And by becoming master of the senses, he becomes a Goswami or spiritual hero. Well, we should all want to become spiritual heroes. Text 26. My dear lotus-eyed, kindly explain to me where you are coming from, who you are, and whose daughter you are. You appear very chaste. What is the purpose of your coming here? What are you trying to do? Please explain all these things to me. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The first aphorism in the Vedanta Sutra is Atato Brahma Jigyasa. In the human form of life, one should put many questions to himself and to his intelligence. In the various forms of life, lower than human life, the intelligence does not go beyond the range of life's primary necessities, namely eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. Dogs, cats, and tigers are always busy trying to find something to eat or a place to sleep, trying to defend and have sexual intercourse successfully. In the human form of life, however, one should be intelligent enough to ask what he is, why he has come into the world, what his duty is, who is the supreme controller, what is the difference between dull matter and the living entity, etc. There are so many questions, and the person who is actually intelligent should simply inquire about the supreme source of everything. Atato Brahma Jigyasa. A living entity is always connected with a certain amount of intelligence. But in the human form of life, the living entity must inquire about his spiritual identity. Okay, my dear devotees, that means you have to ask questions. And no questions, no knowledge. A living entity is always connected with a certain amount of intelligence, but in the human form of life, the living entity must inquire, meaning must ask questions, about his spiritual identity. This is real human intelligence. It is said that one who is simply conscious of the body is no better than an animal, even though he be in the human form. In Bhagavad Gita 15:15, Sri Krishna says, Sarva Sicham Hridisani Visto Matakshmiti Gyanam Apohanam Cha. I am seated in everyone's heart. And from me come remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. In the animal form, the living entity is completely forgetful of his relationship with God. This is called apohana, or forgetfulness. In the human form of life, however, consciousness is more greatly developed, and consequently, the human being has a chance to, to understand his relationship with God. In the human form, one should utilize his intelligence by asking all these questions. See, we have to ask a lot of questions. You know, when I say any questions, everybody keeps quiet. Don't learn anything by keeping quiet like that. The real human intelligence, I'm sorry, a living entity is always connected with a certain amount of intelligence. But in the human form of life, the living entity must inquire, there it is, meaning must ask questions about his spiritual identity. This is real human intelligence. It is said that one who is simply conscious of the body is no better than an animal, even though he be in human form. In Bhagavad Gita 15.15, Sri Krishna says, Sarva Shichaham Hridisani Visto, Matak Smriti Jnanam Apohanam Cha. I am seated in everyone's heart, and from me come remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. In the animal form, the living entity is completely forgetful of his relationship with God. This is called apohanam, or forgetfulness. In the human form of life, however, consciousness is more greatly developed, and consequently, the human being has a chance to understand his relationship with God. In the human form, one should utilize his intelligence by asking all these questions. See, there are many, many questions we have to ask. So whenever I say, are there any questions? If someone remains silent, that means they haven't really listened carefully, nor are they really awake. They're sleeping. In Bhagavad Gita 15:15, Sri Krishna says, Sarva Sicham Hridisani Visto, Matak Smritir Jnanam Apohanam Cha. I am seated in everyone's heart, and from me come remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. In the animal form, the living entity is completely forgetful of his relationship with God. This is called apohanam, or forgetfulness. In the human form of life, however, consciousness is more greatly developed, and consequently, the human being has a chance to understand his relationship with God. In the human form, one should utilize his intelligence by asking all these questions, just as just as Puranjana, the living entity, is asking the unknown girl where she has come from, what her business is, why she is present, etc. These are inquiries about Atma Tattva, self-realization. The conclusion is that unless a living entity is inquisitive, meaning anxious to understand things and asking questions, is inquisitive about self-realization, he is nothing but an animal. Wow. Okay, I think we will stop right there. Are there any questions anyone has? Any questions or comments? Any questions or comments?
Hare Krishna, Harivilas Maharaj. I have a question.
You're very welcome. Go ahead.
Yes, in the material world, we talk about in the spiritual advancement, the attraction between man and woman, it's so strong sometimes, it's gets one away from that. But how come in the olden days, the kings used to have multiple wives, etc., etc., and still they were advancing spiritually?
Well, they were not so advanced spiritually. They were advanced in being powerful leaders of society, but when they have a harem of women or wives, they're not so advanced. Uh, you can just imagine if a man has 20 wives, uh, that's like living in hell. You know? So it's hard enough to have one wife, but if you have 20 wives or 50 wives, etc., it's like hell. It'll never be peaceful. You'll always be harassed by one thing or another. So we should not be attracted to such things. And that's why uh, Lord Krishna has uh, recommended that you should only have one wife and be always protective of the one wife and always treat her with love and devotion, but not be attracted to her body, but be attracted to her service as a devotee. And that way you can have a peaceful life. When you have a good wife, that means that she is a good devotee engaged in Krishna consciousness, and she's happy because her husband is protecting her so she can not be in anxiety of doubt or of being in one way or another harassed by unholy people. So when a woman feels protected, she becomes very, very spiritually advanced and engages in devotional service and does many wonderful things to maintain the family, to keep the husband happy, and to also be an inspiration for spiritual advancement. Okay, um, so our takeaway today in the human form. I'm sorry. Let me see. No, Krishna Bahir Mukhana Boga Vanshakare Nikatasta Mayatare Chapatiyadare. It is said in the Prema Vivarta that when a living entity wants to enjoy material nature, he is immediately victimized by the material energy. Wow, this is the law of nature. People should understand that it's actually a law of nature. When a living entity wants to enjoy material nature, he is immediately victimized by the material energy. Why should one be victimized by the material energy as soon as he wants material nature, material pleasures? It's because everything belongs to Krishna. Nothing belongs to us. So if we try to enjoy, or in other words, usurp what belongs to Krishna, we will be immediately victimized by the material energy. It's a law of nature. A living entity is not forced to come into the material world. He makes his own choice being attracted by a beautiful woman. Every living entity has the freedom to be attracted by material nature or to stand as a hero and resist that attraction. It is simply a question of the living entities being being attracted to or not being attracted. Yeah, we should be attracted by the engagement of devotional service and hearing and chanting and engaging in the devotional service of the Lord. We should be attracted to that, not to the body or the physical, let's say, attributes of a attractive woman. One who can keep himself steady and resist the attraction of material nature is certainly and deserves to be called a Goswami. Unless one is master of the senses, he cannot become a Goswami. The living entity can take one of two positions in this world. He may become a servant of his senses, or he may become master of them. By becoming a servant of the senses, one becomes a great material hero. And by becoming master of the senses, he becomes a Goswami or spiritual hero. So rather than becoming a great material hero, it's much better to become a master of the senses and become a Goswami or spiritual hero who can control the senses. Okay, we will stop right there. Are there any questions, comments? Any questions or comments? Well, I have a question. So it says here that material activities are false heroic activities, whereas restraining the senses from material engagement is great heroism. However great a hero one may be, in the material world, he can be immediately conquered by the lumps of flesh and blood known as the breasts of women. So this brings up a uh, very interesting point. Today, we see that women usually wear clothing by which parts of their breasts show. And men are attracted to such women, not knowing that they're going to be trapped like you would call a victim of material nature. So, what is so attractive about a breast? Actually, it's just made of blood and flesh. So, beauty is only skin deep. For example, let's say there is a beautiful woman, but you put her on but you put a knife to her skin, open up her flesh, and immediately what you were attracted with is lost. Now you don't see, a nice breast or a nice this or that. What you see is blood and mucus, etc. Therefore, that beauty is only skin deep. The rest of the body, which is the most important part of the body, is full of blood and other unsavory uh, types of things. So as soon as you open up the breast of the body or the skin and open up to see the blood and gut of the person, you lose that attraction immediately. It's just like a woman that goes and has an operation and they have to cut open her heart. Uh, all that attraction is lost immediately. So therefore, this beauty, physical beauty, is actually an illusion meant for low-class men who think that having sex is the real pleasure in life. That is the major illusion that is enticing men to work very hard day and night in order to have sense gratification. But that sense gratification, they will work all day long and to enjoy 5 or 10 minutes of sense gratification at night, and then go to sleep, and then wake up, and again, a full day of hard work, and then come home, eat something, have 10 minutes of sense gratification, and then go to sleep, and then start over again. So that in order to have 10 minutes of sense gratification, they have to work like a donkey all day long. So the best thing is to lose our attraction to lumps of breasts and other bodily appendages of women and be attracted by Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and be engaged in the service of Krishna with love and devotion. Then we become a real person. Those men who are attracted by breasts and attracted by sex are not actually real people. They are falsely engaged in illusory activities. And those illusory activities will lead them eventually to death and suffering. Okay, so our takeaway is this verse by Yamunacharya, Yad Avadi Mamacheta Krishna Padara. Since I have been engaged in the transcendental loving service of Krishna, realizing ever new pleasure in him, whenever I think of sex pleasure, I spit at the thought and my lips curl with distaste. When one is spiritually advanced, he can no longer be attracted by the lumps of flesh and blood which are the breasts of young women. The word Nirantarao is significant because although the breasts are situated in different locations, the action is the same. We should not make any distinction between attachment and envy. As described in Bhagavad Gita 337, they are both the products of Rajo Guna. Kama esa, Krodha esa, Raja Guna samud bhava. So this wearing clothing that shows parts or almost all of the breasts of a woman is an enticement for going to hell. And one should not be tricked by it. All those breasts are simply full of blood and, and other unsavory uh, things. The real beauty is that of a woman who is a devotee and dresses nicely, does not reveal her bodily flesh, but dresses very nicely and is modest and very humble and always engaged in devotional service. That's a real woman. And uh, if a husband protects his wife, she can do miracle things for the husband in many ways because she's protected and not in anxiety every day. But if a woman is not properly protected and is in anxiety, then life becomes hellish for her and for her husband. Okay, so our takeaway is this statement by Yamunacharya. Since I have been engaged in the transcendental loving service of Krishna, realizing ever new pleasure in him, whenever I think of sex pleasure, I spit at the thought and my lips curl with the distaste. When one is spiritually advanced, he can no longer be attracted by the lumps of flesh and blood, which are the breasts of young women. The word nirantaro is significant because although the breasts are situated in different locations, the action is the same. We should not make any distinction between attachment and envy. As described in Bhagavad Gita 337, they are both products of Rajaguna, Kama Esa, Krodha Esa, Rajaguna Samud Bhava. Yeah, so the lumps of flesh and blood, which are breasts of young women, should not be an attraction for an intelligent person. They are attraction for low-class men, but not for intelligent devotees. Okay, so whenever women are walking around with their breasts partially visible or more than partially visible, almost completely visible, you should understand that that's an enticement to go to hell. It is not something wonderful. But most stupid men think, oh, it's a very wonderful thing. No, it's a very horrible thing. A woman should always be very modest, always cover her body and be shy and modest and always be a good mother, protecting her children and protecting her husband by being a good mother and a good wife. Okay, so all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Please chant Hare Krishna and be happy. And don't get caught in this life in the horrible situation of being attracted by nakedness of women. It's not something wonderful. It's actually something horrible. And women should not be attracted by the bodies of men, but they should be attracted by the devotion of a man, and the man should be attracted by the devotion of a woman engaged in devotional service. Through devotional service, people become real. By engaging in sense gratification, people become fools and rascals. So we should be real people by controlling the senses and the mind and engaging them always in the service of Krishna. Thank you very much, my dear devotees. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Have a very good day. And please chant Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.